Once in a while, I decide to share what I call a tirade. Yeah. So once in a while, I enjoy a tirade. Usually when I can catch you off guard so that you won't run out the door. But no. A different tirade here and there, and on my views on some things. Sometimes they're not things that would be necessary or appropriate in a service itself, or in a talk, the Sunday talk, the message of the day. But still, sometimes they're things just really important. So one thing I never chose to talk about is politics, but in the first service, I decided to do a little tirade there about that. I'm not going back to that one. I'm done. Yeah, we moved on. That was the old tirade. Now, yeah. So I won't revisit that. But this is only something I do once in a while. It just happens because of enough questions and so forth. And, just depends on the vibe and the mood and all that of the group. But I did talk about politics in the earlier one, and in other ones we've talked about relationships, and it's not a talk about relationships. It's when I hear enough people struggling with a certain thing, and I know I've talked about it, I know I've written about it, and everybody's still struggling with the same thing. That is the moment I decide to do a tirade. When I just say, enough is enough, guys, and call some certain things out for certain ways or reasons. So we did it on different topics in the past. Today I'm going to share one about prosperity and abundance. I'll keep it as brief as I can, but the bottom line is, because I've done a full talk about this before, it should be relatively obvious to most of us that the concept of prosperity is pretty twisted on planet Earth. People have not quite gotten to understand what that means and what that looks like. I've done talks about it. We've done workshops on it. People still struggle. And it's, that could continue. We can't shame ourselves for having financial issues, but we do have to understand we have an option that we can change things in our own lives. The New Age movement, even the spiritual New Agey kind of movement, didn't help matters when it looked like people started making prosperity your goal. Like, pretty soon there was this fad. If you can create more prosperity, that means you're a cool person. You're a better person. And it does not. So we were never supposed to be caught up in prosperity in the egocentric sense, nor poverty in the egocentric sense. We're supposed to learn to be at peace with wherever we are. Be at peace with wherever you are, financially, romantically, and so on. Start with where you are. Now, you would like to improve that? Then let's start improving it. But don't make prosperity a religion. Don't make it your God to have more prosperity, more financial abundance, or whatever. This world is going to reflect our consciousness. When we see lack, it's not a personal thing, it's a consciousness thing. So, what we need to create more of is the presence of God. And when we have that, it starts to cure our problems. People keep trying to cure with science. They try to cure with politics. They try to cure with other things of the outside. People even think war is a solution to some things, and it isn't. So these are all the insane ways that people deal with things. It only really comes from consciousness. And when we are in the right consciousness, yes, generally speaking, we're going to see changes in our lives. We won't be as codependent in relationship, and we won't experience as much lack in prosperity. There's a perk to doing this work. There's a perk. There are perks that come along with this. But remember, don't think about, where's my lottery? I started attending Unity of Sedona. I started reading prosperity books. I want the lottery. I've been spiritual now for 3 weeks. I want the lottery. It's all bogus. First, self-love and self-comfort. Be at peace. Mother Teresa once said she's been all over the world, and she actually had more sympathy for Americans when it came to poverty and prosperity. She had more sympathy for Americans than she said people in Calcutta and in the Far East. She said, I feel sorry for you people more than them, because you have and you don't even know you have. Another time, she and or others have said things like, the difference between these countries is that somebody will have something here and say, look what I have. In other countries, they say, look what I can share. To them, it's they have it, but it's now, how can I share this? It could be a banana. And it's okay, who's here? Let's break this up. Instead of mine. So if we're that prosperous of a country, which they say we are, why are we so greedy then? How come the prosperity doesn't flow out? So if you're not hearing just what I'm trying to say, then it's a consciousness, It's a state of mind. It's not about what we have. It's about what we have in consciousness, not in the outside. Now, all that said, being a spiritual leader and a counselor and so forth, I've had my share of really wonderful people, especially artists, starving artists, because the world doesn't totally support the arts as much as other things. But I've had my fair share of musicians and artists and new age spiritual people come to me and struggle financially. My heart goes out, I do prayer, we look at what's happening inside, and we do the work to shift the consciousness. Shift the consciousness, and you're more likely going to see changes on the outside. However, I also would say to you, if you're an artist and you're a person wanting to create more prosperity, show up on time to things once in a while. Don't keep telling me how bad the world is and how they don't get you. Okay? Show up on time once in a while. Charge reasonable rates like everybody's supposed to charge. If you're saying, I'm not getting enough customers, it could be. Maybe it's the rates. Maybe you're not realizing that when you're selling something, there's a part of yourself in that. So if it's not liked by people, maybe you need to change something inside. It's very important for us to recognize, even if you're selling for a company, you're still there. Your presence is still there. Get aligned. Get in a really bright, positive state and sell something that you believe is making a difference in helping people. And if that's not what you believe about your product, change products. Go somewhere else. Be efficient. Be responsible. A lot of us have prosperity issues because prosperity is a grounding thing. It's a material thing. But if we're not in our body, how can we expect material success? So it's really difficult when we try to approach the world of money and income and try to do it from an airy-fairy place. You kind of have to get grounded. You got to show up. You got to go with the flow and do things the way they're wanting you to do at that particular business, or go work for a different business. And we'll never, ever, ever be able to create greater abundance by shaming others who are abundant. You can't blame other people and wrong other people who have money and say, well, look at them. And shame them and pick at them so that you feel a little better about not having. It works better to actually give thanks that people have had prosperity. It brings the abundance to you more likely. See, our habit is to find fault with others who seem to have something we don't think we have. So see people with prosperity. Breathe it in. From the very first time I took a prosperity class 35 years ago, one of the first things I heard, never forgot, is that, if you want to create greater prosperity, when you hang with people that have that, you find deservability instead of shaming and distancing from such people. Join. If you want to be a great healer, hang out with great healers. Get an idea of what it's like to be like that. Not shame it away, but get an idea what it's like to be like that. So, being around prosperous people. And prosperity is not how much you spend. It's a mindset. Learn to discern, buy things that are of the right value to you. If you pay more than you wanted to, you're going to have resentment and you're going to put more darkness in your finances, in your consciousness. So don't pay and go, I hate people, they always overcharge. Then don't buy it. No more blaming. I have a lot of things that I like having, but I find them cheap. In other words, I don't put the dollar to it. I find things, and people gift me things that I like. In other words, I create what looks like prosperity. Sometimes I have very few varieties of clothes. This is my second pair of pants to teach in. I have my black pants and a pair of white pants. And this is the first day I ever wore these. 2 pairs of teaching pants in last 20 years. And I've been teaching 30 something, but one of them wore out. So, and yet you don't stand around going, man, he just looks broke. Guys, I just have what I need. I don't need 10 pairs of pants because I don't need them. I have t-shirts that I wear during the day, and that's it. I have a couple of shirts, that I change off here, and that's it. I don't need it. But I'm not telling you to live meagerly. To me, that's prosperity. I feel great. And there's not a shirt that I don't have that I want. Do you see what I mean by prosperity? Not a shirt that I don't have, that I would really want. If I wanted it, it would somehow find me. That's how I feel about it. I don't wear jewelry. This is my first ring I've ever worn in, I don't even know how long. And it just, you did? Oh, thank you. No. Let me tell you where I got it. No. But guys, please remember, prosperity, man, it's a consciousness, and we all have it. But there's things to not do, like shaming others that have. We can live simple and have all that we need. Just the good keeps coming to us, and it helps if we remember that God brings that good. God is the source of that abundance. When I say that, I don't mean God is up in the sky and you say, hey, God, can you send me some abundance? I'm saying the more we access the mind of God, how could you ever lack if God is all? So when we live that consciousness, we're constantly rewarded for that. I've told you guys, my decor. I love, fairies and things like, I love those beautiful things, angels and all that. That's what I've got. I could see something in a sale in a store, half price, $3 for another fairy or angel. But this is me. It's not about paying the top dollar. You could create a new car if you can believe in that. But do I need 5 cars? No. It doesn't make any sense to me. Studies have shown time and again that you can take people out of poverty, but you can't take poverty out of people. So even if you try to pull someone out of the attitude of poverty and fix them up in a new suit, the studies keep showing that if you were to go across the planet and distribute all money equally to everyone, in a matter of short time, the people who had money before you did that would have it again, and those who didn't wouldn't. Think about how weird that is. Now that proves to us that it's a consciousness. There's nothing wrong with it. Some people are industrious enough to know how to put it to task and make prosperity out of things. Edgar Cayce's foundation was digging for oil. You got Edgar Cayce. This dude is clear. This dude is accurate. They ask him to tune in to where they can get some oil. Why an oil well? Why did they want it? Greed? No. You know what they're going to do? They're going to fund a hospital. Total philanthropy behind it. Total philanthropy. They're drilling for oil. He tells them exactly where to strike oil. They're drilling. They're not getting it. Drilling, not getting it. Finally, one thing after another, and he's telling them. They're saying, why can't we find the oil? And he says, because each of you wants something different. You're not being honest and clear about why you're drilling for oil. So those people finally gave up. Somebody else bought it, and within days, they struck oil. And they're rich. Now, why did they get the oil, guys, and not the spiritual people? Because they said that's all they wanted. All they wanted, they were honest, all we want is the oil. And they went for oil and they found it. The spiritual people were going, well, shame, let's shame the oil, let's shame prosperity. I want it so I can get a new car. They want it so they can feed the hungry. They all wanted something different. It's very important, if you want to be prosperous, show up. Decide what you're about and show up. Unity of Sedona, we make our bills each month. And it's only because people here show up and make donations, and we pay our bills. We're not 6 months ahead in anything. We're not ahead like that at all. And if we ever were ahead, we would end up using the little bit to help someone. That's what we do. That's what we're supposed to do. How can we help? We help the charities in town. We help wherever we can, however we can. And that's not a great thing for a spiritual leader in some people's eyes. Some people want us to make a bank here. They want us to be big money prosperity, because that's what some of them do. Some of the New Age churches are rich, and they think that's a good sign of God and prosperity consciousness. I wouldn't sleep well with that kind of an attitude. You have to know what you're about and not contradict it. So what we're about is true prosperity consciousness, and I love it and I live it, and we do everything we can to share the wealth. Whatever the wealth is, if it's $1 or if it's $100. We do everything to keep distributing, and we're very prosperous because of that. Not prosperous cash on the side. Prosperous in that our bills are paid, things are taken care of, and we have joy. If you can have joy and make a living, I think you're doing the right thing. The last few things, remember that even in the spiritual community, we say, well, we don't buy all that poverty stuff that the old churches do. Yes, you do. because you're programmed that money is the root of all evil. That you're programmed to take vows of poverty in other lifetimes when you were a nun and got none. You know, when you were a priest. I'm sorry. So it was all the vows of no. What a weird way to live. Is that an affirmation? No, no money, no this, no that. It's like we're done with that. But in the soul, it's recorded. That's why soul level healing is essential. And heartfelt, 12-step from poverty would be a great group for people. And open your heart and say, God, you know what? I was mistaken to think that I determine my devotion and sincerity, spiritual sincerity, by being broke. It was wrong. It was a mistake. You are never willing for me to be struggling, nor anyone else, God. And that's the truth, and I live by that truth now. So we take that and we find when you have more prosperity, there's more people in the store whose bill you can pay when you're checking out. More people at the tollway, more charities you can help out. I mean, there's more you can do if you have that abundance. And yet, the world in its wickedness programmed our minds to say that it's all naughty. And it is not. And we have to break free of all that. So we have to make our lives more about receiving and sharing, not the give and take that this world brings us up to live. There was a story I remember as I'm coming to a close on one of those TV, the 20, 60 minutes, one of those kinds of news shows or whatever they call those. This is probably 15, 20 years ago. And it was a story about somewhere in the deep south where industry changed and people were losing their homes. And they're interviewing high school kids whose families are now broke and they're losing their houses and they don't know where they're going. Now, I don't have a ton of money or anything like that, but I'm still watching this going, God, my heart really felt it watching these kids crying and saying, we don't know where our parents are going to go. And there's shame and all this stigma. I'm like, this is not the world God created. There's something wrong with this. Now, here's the weird piece that's even worse than that. I decided that's it. I'm going to get on the phone and call this news show, and I have no extra money, but I will find a way to contribute $200 a month to one of those families because it could help them make their rent and they won't lose their house and change the lives of those kids, right? They weren't interested. They weren't interested. To them, it's news, and they make money off telling you this dramatic news, but they actually didn't want a solution of any kind. And that's again where I say, you know what? In the world, not of the world. Even the things that you think are righteous, somebody, if they're not making money on it, they quash it. And that's what's making our minds, as spiritual integrity that we have, it makes us not want to embrace that world because there's so much yuckiness to it. However, find what can work. So I'm not going to go and call that news show again. I'm not going to watch that news show. Never watched it anyway. I just caught that. And I'm not going to play with that. But instead, when I see people in need, I'll just take care of it. Step up. Don't use that as an excuse to never give. You find a way that works, where you can give and it works. We'll never heal our issues, around money by being fearful and constricted. If you live too afraid and you're not making your rent, you might get a place that's less expensive so that you can have some ease. But here's the problem. Most human beings, when they shift that, they never shift into the ease. They shift in fear they can't make their rent, so they get a less expensive place, which some people don't do. They won't even make that wise decision. But even if they do, for some reason I've watched, and there's never greater ease. I see them and I say, how's it going? Whatever happened to you? Well, I got a less expensive place. Oh, thank God. That's amazing. You must feel quite lighter. No, I'm still always stressed out. Less rent, less nice house, but I'm still always worried. There's something wrong with that if you ever hear yourself feeling like that, acting like that, speaking like that. Guys, if we're going to change the prosperity and the consciousness in the world, it's not by making it a religion and then, hooping and hollering about how much more money we made this week because we're practicing this prosperity secret. It's consciousness. And it should look like this. Gradual. It shouldn't be a lotto because most lotto winners crash. I want my consciousness to change, not my money in my pocketbook. I want my consciousness to change. And that changes by recognizing this is not about outside, it's inside. And it's also changed by giving, Because as we give, we receive. Is that all making sense? It just then it multiplies. And I'm not sharing these things because I think some world power person is going to watch and go, oh, that's it. I'm going to now give all my money to charity and take care of the poor. No. Do I think that? It's a possibility. But am I telling you because I expect that? No. I'm speaking to you about it so that we can change consciousness here. And then if that goes out, it won't be because somebody watched it and expected some whatever that kind of person, power person gets this and shifts. It's more, if it's going to happen, it's going to be a vibration. It's going to be a frequency. And there are some really amazing people that have big money on this planet, and they're learning to do something different with it. That wasn't done 100 years ago. It wasn't done as much hundreds of years ago. There are people who are commonly billionaires now. Your Bill Gateses of the world, like him or don't like him, I don't care. But the bottom line is he tithes more than the other wealthiest people on the planet. He donates more than the other wealthiest people on the planet make per year. That's how much he tithes, donates. That's incredible. He can donate and he donates to causes. He's trying to turn around third world countries and get them out of third world rating. One guy. And then he's got other wealthy people to pitch in to kind of go in that direction, changing the lives of people. So it doesn't matter if you have $1 trillion or 10. What do you do with your 10? If you clench and fear that it's your last 10, you're not actually going to create 20. But these guys that started, now billionaires, they had 10 left and they used it to make 20. They didn't clench that they'll never have 20. They used the 10 to do something with it. Carnegie and people like that, they started tithing and realized they made more when they gave more. And these were some of those industrial people that were really kind of hard-nosed people, but they still found a way to spiritualize something that this world typically doesn't spiritualize. And lastly, again, this world doesn't support the idea of prosperity for all. That's why people have had such an easy time making it a greedy, negative topic. There's people clenching around it. Where's the cure for cancer? You see, there's too much money being made in people having cancer. There's too much money in the days when they were exposing tobacco companies, for example. There was too much money being made that they actually put in addictive ingredients in those. Too much money being made. And then somebody's going to slap their hand and say, oh, you have to write $1 billion check to some of these people. And we all go, oh, wow, they got $1 billion was nothing to them. That's how big money is on this planet and seems to control. Money is not the root of all evil. Fear is the root of all. Fear is the cause of all evil. Fear then causes people to want to control so that they don't feel fearful. But then money is a way people think that they're in control. And it's all an illusion. So in part, what I'm saying is it's a mind change that we need. You're in the world, don't be of the world. Keep doing your best to keep multiplying your prosperity, but by giving and shining your light. Be a good person. I'm more likely to buy something from you because you're a nice person than because you use some bizarre sales tactic to hypnotize me into buying your stuff. It just doesn't interest me when I see the games. But I see good people. I've bought things I don't even need. $10 for that? Okay, I don't even want it. I don't even need it. But that person has such a light about them. I want to help them. I want to thank them. Then I take that thing and then I give it to somebody here because I think you're a great light. Now, what did I just, that's multiplying it. And spirit is going to reward me in its own way. It multiplies because of the goodness. So you don't have to work yourself to death to make prosperity, to be abundant. Just be that abundant in consciousness. Keep giving love and peace and joy and finances to people, and it multiplies. I pray this makes sense because I know it's contrary to what a lot of the world says, all right?